Here we are once again with some more modifications from Team Liquid. We're about to sand down a quad-core processor. We've already done pre-preparation work and took several pictures to document our wonderful process, so here we go. Okay, there's the first step, and as you can see, some of the copper's starting to show through, so we're going to turn it 90 degrees and keep going. As you can see, this process is going to take a long time, so we're going to wet the paper a few more times, and as soon as you start to see all copper coating, then we're going to switch to a different grade of sandpaper. We're using 600 grit right now. We'll move to 800 grit as soon as we get this thing sanded down. But I don't know if you can see that. It's already starting to look pretty nice and smooth. Here we are, phase 2, about probably 15 phases of sanding a processor. And just continuing the same process of going the same directions, back and forth, not really applying any kind of pressure. And pretty much just keeping the sandpaper damp, not so much watery. And in between sand, I'm putting it over here on a cloth, lint-free cloth with alcohol to remove any excess. Once the first sand process that I started over here, you can tell a difference that it's starting to take more off. And I'm going to rotate 90 and keep going. I'm also using rubber gloves, which is a necessity, but since I'm a freak about fingerprints, and I did a little car maintenance back in the day, I just don't want to get any fingerprints on raw metal. You can see there's quite a bit of debris on there that I got to clean off to continue. We're going to swap out the sandpaper and go fresh. After the first two go at it, I've decided to get more water on here because the paper was quite dry, but I'm going to go at a slower pace because you really don't want to get your processor wet. It's important to keep that in the back of your mind. You really don't have to apply much pressure. It's just a tedious process of going back and forth. And rotate. It's also good to wear gloves because that way you're not sanding your skin off. Starting to get there. Okay, so it's been a few times going back and forth, sanding that little guy down, and now we're at the point where we want to measure to see how flat it really is. I've taken a couple of your everyday razor blades, and I'm using a light to determine how much I can actually see through there. I did this a few minutes ago, and I thought, maybe the razor blade wasn't flat, but it's just simply that the processor isn't flat at all. So I did some more sanding, and it's smoothed down quite a bit, but what I'm doing is I'm taking the razor blade and going from corner to corner, and I'm using a light to see get how much I can see through there. So, again, back to the old working on car days, I'm going to take a Sharpie and put an X on the processor. And I'm going to start sanding again. I've changed to a 500 grit paper. I previously was using a 600. And just continuing on until we get that little guy flat. Okay, so I've been doing this for about an hour and a half now, and I went through 600 grit, 800 grit, 1000, and now I'm on 2000 grit. And as you can see, we're looking at a pretty shiny, almost mirror-like appearance. Now, after changing up between using a razor blade and the marker approach, which was crap by the way, decided to stick with the razor blade approach and use a light to determine the amount of light getting through the bottom. And we're just finishing up here. Once I got to the 2000 grit sandpaper, I've had to clean it, get all the extra metal off after going across it several times. So we're going to do this a couple more times, and we should be finishing up with a very shiny and smooth surface. Here we are again, the Team Liquid back in effect. Today we're going to put some thermal compound, we're using Arctic Silver, on a processor that we've just lapped. For detailed instructions you can go to their website and check that out, but for right now we're going to do it. You need to make sure where the little triangle is in the overall scheme of things, because you want to get a nice clean line of compound right across there. So I'm going to try to do this right the first time. For those amateurs in the crowd, you may have to do it more than once. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to get a nice clean amount from about here to here, and you want to keep in reference your little triangle at the bottom of your processor. It needs to be horizontal going across there. We're going to use a razor blade to help out, to keep it away from the edge. Don't want to get too much compound on there, and you want a nice clean line. You may have to try this a few times to get all the right amount on. It's kind of messy, but that's pretty much what you got to work with. Not too much, not too little. We'll put it in the board.